Hey guys, how's it going? It's Joe Man Luke. So today I am bringing you a build of a Titan that uses Stampede Ancestral Totems. It has been a super fun build. We've been playing it over the last 2 weeks. We've been able to take down Xesht the Breach Lord. We got a try at the Arbiter of Ash. Unfortunately, we died to mechanics, but I don't think it was the fault of the build. We were able to kill the Trial Master, the last boss in the Sanctum, and we've been able to do map bosses as high as T18s with Delirium at 30%. So it is a pretty good build, and I think that there's a lot of room for improvement here. We've only spent about, I don't know, maybe three or four divines on this gear that we have now. I think this build would be great if you're a new player to Trade League or you don't have a lot of time, because it's super fun, it's super easy to pilot, and it's super cheap to gear. Now, when I made the build, I started out as a Shockwave Totem Titan, and I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I decided to mess around with the Ancestral Totem and the skills under the Mace Tree for Warrior. And what I discovered is that there's basically a couple skills that work good. One being Sunder, the other one being Molten Blast, and the last one being Stampede. Now, when I tried Stampede, I wasn't initially sold on it. It didn't seem like it was quite there, but as I fiddled around with some support gems, I eventually found one that basically made the entire build sing and work amazingly, and that is basically the crux of the entire build itself. So let's go ahead and talk about our skills. Now, as always, if you want to skip past all of this BS, you can just go to my max roll link that is in the description below, where I have all of the skill gems that I use, my passive tree, my Atlas passives, and those things. So click that link if you don't want to watch the rest of this. So we are using Ancestral Totem with Stampede plus Jagged Ground. This is the support gem I was talking about, and this is basically what changes everything. So let me show you how it works. If I put Stampede on my bar here and then I just use it, you'll see that we take 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, and then jump onto the ground, and we have a big explosion, and then an aftershock after. That's just part of the quality on our gem. But every time that you take a step while using Stampede, you will create Jagged Ground, and then when you jump and do your final slam, it will explode all of those Jagged Ground behind it. Now, from what I've gathered, the way that the Jagged Ground support works with Stampede is that every time you take a step and then do your final slam, you have a 50% chance to spawn another Jagged Ground that your Stampede will then detonate. So if we use the skill again here, 1, 2, 3, jump, you'll see that these two back here actually exploded twice instead of just once from the Jagged Ground. So from what I can tell, you can have up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Jagged Ground in one skill use. However, getting that many in one go is pretty rare. Usually you see 1 or 2 extra Jagged Grounds just because it's a 50% chance. But if we put our skill back into our Ancestral Totem and take a look at our damage here, you'll see that each footstep does 17,000 damage. The slam at the end does 51,000 damage. The Jagged Grounds themselves actually also deal 17,000 damage. So although the damage looks small, when you get a ton of explosions, and if you have enough area that they can overlap on each other, you can actually hit a monster multiple times with this 17,000 damage plus the 51,000 damage and do a couple 100,000 damage just with one totem. And we can spawn multiple totems. So if we hop into this map and find some monsters, I'll show you how it works. We lay down a totem, and it actually spawns a little ancestral guy to run forward and use the skill for us. And we can summon up to 3 of these totems to run around and basically do these big slams. It explodes. We get big chains of Jagged Ground. From what I can tell, it seems like the Ancestral Warriors can actually set off each other's Jagged Ground. I don't think that gives us any more damage, but it is kind of a neat little interaction. Now, as you can see, we have a level 33 Ancestral Warrior Totem. We have basically in our gear tried to take as many plus level of all melee skills as possible. We have 6 here, 6 here, 2 more on our amulet. Our gem is level 19. Our Stampede is also level 19. The reason we want so much plus level to melee skills is because the way that the totems work is that they don't actually use the damage or really any of the stats on your weapons at all. They essentially have their own weapon that is then scaled by the skill that they're using. So as you can see here at the bottom of our Ancestral Warrior Totem, it says it deals 627 to 940 base physical damage. So that is the damage of the totem's weapon, and it scales up with gem level. On our Stampede gem over here, you can see that the attack damage is 235%. So basically that's the scaling value that it takes from this base physical damage and then scales it up that much. So every time that you get a plus gem level to your Ancestral Warrior Totem or your Stampede, you actually scale them both at the same time. So you get a higher base damage and a higher scaling value. Basically what this means is that 1 plus to melee skill gems increases your damage by like 20%. I think theoretically you can get up to like level 40, but getting to 36 or 37 is really not that hard and really not that expensive. We've made this build with only about, I think it's like 3 or 4 divines or so, which seems like a lot, but that's pretty budget for the amount of content that we've been able to do. Most of that cost just went into fixing our resists, honestly. The actual weapons themselves, I think were maybe like 10 to 30 chaos, somewhere in there. One problem with increasing gem level this much is that it actually increases the cost of the Ancestral Warrior Totem rather dramatically. As you may know, mana costs in POE2 are very, very high, especially with high gem levels. Right now, our Ancestral Totem costs 570 life. We're running blood magic, so I basically removed all of my mana so I didn't have to worry about it and just changed it to life costs. So as you can see, we're only running 5 supports right now. If you get a 6 support or you have really high gem levels in that sort of 37, 38 range, you may want to consider putting inspiration in that last slot just to reduce the cost. If you see here, if I swap out my AoE, it goes down to 286 life. That's a lot more manageable. So in some ways, I decided to hold off on getting more plus gem level on our gloves or the extra one on our amulet, just because I didn't think we would have the life to sustain it. We have 4,100 life, but that goes pretty fast when your gem costs over 1,000 life if it's at level 38. Another way that we help sort of mitigate that life cost is with Time of Need. I have it turned off because it makes an annoying sound every 10 seconds, but essentially all this does is every 10 seconds with our reduced duration support, it will recover 600 life and remove any curses and elemental ailments. This is super helpful. It's definitely saved me a ton of times when I've been surrounded by monsters and my life total's going down, and then I get that extra boost from this, and it can help mitigate a lot of that high life cost from the skill itself. The other supports we're using in that are Vitality for a little bit of regen and Cannibalism, which is a very, very powerful support. As your totems run around and kill things like in a breach or in a really high density map, every time they kill something, you will leech 4% of your life. There are lots of times where this has saved me when I was surrounded by monsters and my totems come running in and slamming down and regaining me like half my life bar. So for our other 2 support gems, we have Brutality and Magnified Effect. Brutality just because we deal basically all physical damage, and Magnified Effect for more area of effect. Area of effect is king in this build. You want your jagged grounds and your initial steps and your big slam to be as big as possible because you want them to overlap on a single monster. One monster can get hit by multiple of them, but if your area is real small, it's unlikely that they'll get hit by more than one. So we have a lot of area of effect in this build, and you can kind of think of AoE as more damage. That is one of the main reasons why we decided to go with Titan, is because of the Hulking Form passive that gives 50% increased effect to small passive skills, and that will work on passives like this that give increased area of effect for attacks. So instead of a 12% increase, it'll actually be an 18% increased area. For our next skill, we have Armor Breaker. Since we do basically only physical damage, we want to break the enemy's armor if they're a big boss or a particularly tough rare. Now, the reason we're going Armor Breaker instead of just putting the Splinter support on our Mace Strike is because our auto attacks actually don't do that much damage. Our weapons are basically only there to get plus level to melee skills, so you can see they have really low physical damage and basically don't do anything else. Armor Breaker, however, increases the amount of armor it breaks with gem level, so that sort of synergizes really well with the gem level that we're trying to get for our Ancestral Totems. As you can see, it breaks 10,000 armor a hit, but I don't think that includes this 40% from the Demolisher and the extra 15 from physical damage from Splinter. I'm also running Overpower on this, but you can really put anything else in there. It's not like it's particularly useful at stunning enemies. Basically what happens is that Armor Breaker with this level will break like 30,000 armor on a boss, and so you only need 1 or 2 hits to break pretty much every boss's in the game's armor. At the moment, from the damage that we've dealt to bosses, I think that our DPS is about in the 200,000 to 300,000 range, but I really don't think it's that hard to get this up to the million plus damage per second range. If you get enough gem level, if you get enough added physical damage to attacks, each totem will basically deal hundreds of thousands of damage just on its own. This skill is particularly effective against bosses with really large hitbox because they can be hit multiple times by the skill. The last one we have here is Leap Slam with just martial tempo. Really all that's for is to just jump over walls. All right, so let's talk about our Ascendency. So we decided to go Titan, and there's a couple reasons for that, but long story short, if you wanted to go Warbringer, I think you could. I don't think it would be really that much worse, but the extra area of effect that you get from hulking form is pretty nice. I think it's up to you. So as you can see here, we went for Colossal Capacity, which just gives us a chest. All that does is just put this like little side slot onto our inventory. It's not very useful. It's basically attacks that you get in order to get hulking form because it's so powerful. After that, we decided to go for Mysterious Lineage for 15% more max life. Once again, that helps us sort of mitigate that high life cost and give us a little bit of survivability. After that, we went for Stone Skin for 50% more armor from equipped body armor. Now, I know that armor is not very good. I sort of went this route because I felt like we needed more survivability, and I knew that armor would probably get a buff at some point in the future. So if you're watching this build guide like a month from now or a couple weeks from now, this actually may be a really good choice, but as of right now, it's not really that important. We have 4,600 armor, which isn't a ton, but it's enough to mitigate some small damage hits from monsters in breaches or things like that. Unfortunately, Earthbreaker to give extra aftershocks and Ancestral Empowerment to ancestrally boost slams does not work with totems because they specifically specify that it's skills you use yourself, which does not count as a totem uses the skill itself. Crushing Impacts and Surprising Strength I did not try. I think it's possible that this actually works with the ancestral totems, but I'm not entirely sure. I really wanted this more max life and some more survivability since we can't wear a shield, so I didn't go this, but if you feel like your survivability is high, give this a try and see if it works. I don't know. Let me know. Now onto the passive tree. The big important thing with this build is Giant's Blood. You can wield two-handed maces in one hand, but it triples the attribute requirements of weapons. Now why do we run Giant's Blood? It's because two-handed maces can have higher values of plus level to all melee skills. I believe one-handed weapons cap out at +5, but two-handed weapons cap out at +7. That extra bonus actually makes them quite a bit cheaper as well. I think each of these I picked up for like 10 to 30 exalts, something really cheap. You can get +7s out there for less than a divine if you look really hard and sort of pay attention to the market. Now, in order to get the requirement for this, as you can see, our maces require 142 strength apiece, which when tripled is over 400 strength. As you can see, we have 499 strength, which basically helps us get a high life pool as well. One important thing to note about this Ascendency. Hulking forms is 50% increase of small passive skills. Attribute points are not small passive skills. I know this sucks. I got baited by this as well. However, it does not work. It doesn't work with any skill that has this sort of like little plus sign attribute note. So even these +12 strength ones and these ones down here that say strength and reduce mana are not affected by the hulking form. This is one of the main reasons that I think you can also go Warbringer instead of Titan, as I initially thought that Titan would be the only one that could really hit those high levels of strength. Now, +7 mauls essentially require about 600 strength, which is not impossible, but it does take a significant gear investment. You're going to need 30 strength on basically every piece of gear that you have, and you're going to have to be a high level, like level 90 to 95. Right now, we are level 91 on here, and we're basically not going to go any higher than that, but we've essentially tried to get as much strength as possible. So totems will actually benefit from basically all of these generic melee damage nodes or area damage nodes, as long as it meets the requirement of the totem itself. So you can see that it is a totem that is AoE, it's melee, physical, duration, and meta. So if there's anything on the passive tree that essentially affects those stats, it will also affect the totem. So we tried to take as much area of effect, as much melee damage, a little bit of armor. We went for these big totem trees. These increased totem damage passives are super strong because they're 24% small passive skills, and they will benefit from the Titan's hulking form passive that increases it by 50%. So that is 36% increased totem damage per passive. So those are super strong. We try to pick up as many of these plus to strength nodes as we can to reduce the load on our gear for getting strength. For jewel sockets, I just picked up increased totem damage and increased totem life. I noticed that my totems were dying to some boss mechanics, so I just wanted to get a little bit of extra life on them. Other than that, we got brute strength for 1% increased damage per 15 strength, and it reduces your max mana by 10%. That doesn't matter because we don't have any mana, so that's a pretty good one. We also run resolute technique. Totems do have an accuracy rating, and it will be hard to get that extra accuracy. It seems like some of the accuracy on gear is bugged and does not work with totems, so I decided that we would just forego critting. We already do tons of damage and just get resolute technique, and it would also make it a lot easier to gear. The last main thing that we went for is blood magic to remove all our mana and convert all of our skill costs to life. Once again, if you want to look at the skill tree, you can find it on the max roll link down below. All right, for gear, it is pretty straightforward. Really, all you want is a weapon with as much plus to level of skill melee gems as you can get, and 30 strength. That extra strength is really going to help you meet the requirements for them. We want one in both hands, so I have both of those here. For the helmet, you just want resist, life, increase armor, chaos res. I have some rarity on there as well. Amulets can get plus level to melee skill gems, so you want to get that there as well. For your chest piece, you're just looking for resist and life. Belt is resist and life. Gloves can actually have increased attack speed, physical damage, and plus to melee skill gems. So if you can spend some good money on these other pieces to try and make up your resistances so that you can get that extra damage on your gloves, that's what you want to do. But in this case, I just didn't have the cash to spend on it. We spent probably 3 divines trying out Arbiter of Ash, and unfortunately we weren't able to kill him. For boots, we want max move speed, life, resists, and for rings, we want life, resists, and plus physical damage to attacks. That plus physical damage will work on your totems, and it does give quite a significant increase to damage. However, any plus damage you have on your weapon is not going to work. It's only the ones that you get on like your rings or your gloves. For our sockets, all we really have is plus chaos res. At the end right now, that leaves us with 4,100 life. This build is a little bit squishy. It can be basically one-shot by a lot of boss mechanics, and you can get caught in packs of monsters. However, our main defense on this build is the little bit of armor that we have and the ability to stand far away from all the monsters, since we can just use our totems across the screen. So you basically just run around, cast your totems ahead of you, and then let them basically do all the work. You can be at the mercy of the totem AI a bit, as the totems might not target the monsters that you wanted them to target. So Shockwave Totem is a little bit easier in that respect, but I found the trade-off of having these giant chain explosions going off to be well worth the small loss in survivability. And as you can see from the gameplay, clearly it's not too bad. We've been able to kill some bosses, and it's been a lot of fun. So that's all I've got for this week. Give the build a try. Let me know what you think. There's a new video every week on this channel, and I also stream on Thursdays and Fridays from about 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at U.S. Central Time at twitch.tv/JoeManLuke. So head on over there. It would mean a lot to me if you would like and subscribe and come to hang out with me in my Twitch chat. But other than that, let me know if there's some fun builds you want to see me play, and I will leave you guys with the footage of me killing the Breach Lord Xesht. We'll catch you later. Peace out. I don't really want to just like one-shot him, but at the same time, it's kind of good for videos. Oh my god. I don't know how you tell when he's going to do that. Okay. That one I don't know how to dodge. Okay. Okay, he got stunned during the hand. Oh, this is the... Okay, somehow I managed to survive that. Here's the hand. Here's the hand. Okay, we dodged it. Die. Woo! We did it. Oh, okay. Holy shit. I was so close, dude. Oh my god. Wow, you really don't get a lot of time to do that. Oh man. All right, well, we learned something. It was worth the opportunity to learn.